Hello, and welcome to AstroPop TV, where astrology meets pop culture. Where astrology and pop culture had a beautiful love child. Ooh. It's a little weird looking, but it's okay, we like weird here. Where we use pop culture and astrology as a tool to understand more about ourselves and others. Astrology is such a beautiful guide map for understanding and navigating through the journey of life. It's also a wonderful way to celebrate the uniqueness and dynamism of ourselves and our charts, right? As above in the sky, so below. It's always a mirror. So let's get it poppin', shall we? Now, for today's episode, I recently became extremely curious, intrigued about the natal chart and transits of Renaissance woman, actress, artist, intellectual, pro-Black as love that about her, Amanda Seales. Genius! Brilliant sister. Particularly in the context of her very visible and visceral struggles with likability. She came clean to her social media audience about being outcast and rejected from Black media spaces, the very spaces that she serves and contributes her talent to.
If it wasn't for y'all, I would really think that I ain't doing shit. The industry I'm in does not recognize me. Like, I don't get invited to Essence Women in Hollywood. I've never been invited to the NAACP Image Awards. I've been nominated for an Image Award. Never been invited to the NAACP Image Awards. So I just want to thank y'all for always reminding me that I really am valuable, because the game and the industry that I've been in has never let me know.
She brilliantly and alchemically turned lemons into lucrative lemonade, forging an Unlike tour. So let's pop into the chart and see what the planets say, shall we? Now, when I first looked at Amanda's chart, whoa. Talk about living astrology and exemplifying your chart to the T. The very first thing that stood out to me, if you take a look here, is her Mercury and Mars conjunction at the very top of the chart in the air sign of Gemini. Gemini is swift. Now, Mars is our masculine energy. It's how we assert ourselves. It's fighting, it's working. It's our yang energy. Mercury is how we communicate, gather, and disseminate information. This combination, Mars and Mercury in Gemini, can be pretty much an intellectual warrior, okay? A warrior of words on steroids. I see this visual of a big old brain fencing for fun, just like ha 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 ha. Gemini, the twin, super adaptable, super fast, will run circles around you mentally. Now, these two planets, this planetary conjunction is conjunct the MC, otherwise known as the medium coli or the midheaven. And the midheaven is one of the four most powerful angles of the chart. It's a cardinal angle and it represents our career, our visible public image, and our unfolding legacy. Chef's kiss to Miss Seales for perfectly embodying the intellect, the swiftness and boutedness of Mars and Mercury in Gemini. Now, the planet Mercury in the sign of Gemini is actually an optimal placement, as it's considered domicile, meaning the planet is in the sign that it rules. Okay? As one of my teachers, Tony Howard, would say, it's in a clear channel of expression and functionality. It's equipped to communicate. It has all of the tools to do so. Now, Amanda brings this functionality, this intellectual warrior energy to the public, and fearlessly, I might add. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the trickster, so she likes to have fun too. She likes a little bit of gossip and a little bit of pop culture like myself, okay? She's got layers, there's layers to her. Moving on, the next placement that I noticed in her chart, which came to no surprise at all, because as I said earlier, pro-Black is her sun and moon in Cancer in the 10th house, okay? 10th house of the public and career yet again. Seales is an activist and very much for her people.
You know, whether you like me or not, I've dedicated my entire life to the advancement and the love of Black people.
Now, the sign of Cancer is actually known to be more of a tribalist, a protector of family or chosen family, sometimes even a nationalist. They can be clan-like in the sense of sticking to their own, sticking to their people, and not really fucking with outsiders like that. You see her nurturing Black folks, nurturing the Black community, and protecting us with those Cancer claws. That hard shell is just a protector, and really, it's a little softy inside.
For what it's worth, I care. I don't ever want to be somebody who's in the world harming people.
With that sun and moon in Cancer, moon ruling the emotions, her heart is really about her people.
I would love to be loved
by the people I love. I love Black people. Like, I love being a part of this community diasporically as an American.
Because Cancer is a water sign, it's an emotional sign. And it's actually ruled by the moon, which is a lunar energy that changes every 2 days. So that can be intense for Cancer people. Their moods are kind of changing with the moon, right? Changing with the tides. There's a bunch of Cancers that call out the pettiness, you know, and it's just, that's the protective vibes that you're getting. That's the kind of shutting down and like, you hurt me. Now, in terms of her ascendant, aka rising sign, which is, it's pretty much your approach to the world. It's how you like to greet others, right? Extend yourself to others, and how you like to be greeted. Her ascendant is in the sign of Virgo, also a Mercury ruled sign, okay, like Gemini, but it's different. And it actually creates what's called a square aspect, a 90-degree aspect to that Mars and Mercury at the top of the chart. A square is kind of an aspect of tension. It's something that constantly needs to be adjusted and reconfigured. You have two different energies that are trying to get to the same place, but in different ways, okay? So sometimes a little bit of frictionary, if that's a word, energy can be detected in terms of dealing with people, because it's always working these two energies, okay? How can we get those energies to get out of each other's way? How can we integrate those two energies? It's constant work. And they're both mercurial, meaning they're both about communication in the mind, but they're very different. So that's like constant work, and squares can really be detected in dealing with others. We've got dealing with the public and approach to the world, and it's a square. It's like, okay, get out of my way. No, you get out of my way. Okay, how can we integrate together? It's kind of a constant adjusting. But I will say squares, because they compel you to have to take action, they're super prominent in the charts of creative people. Typically, creative people are always trying to integrate energies. That's how creativity is made, like diamonds under pressure. Now, at its highest function, the Virgo energetic is about service through discernment, refinement, and constructive critique. In its lower form, Virgo can be unconstructive criticism just for the sake of criticizing. And typically, if you find a Virgo ascendant kind of getting like this naggy lashing out, what it really means is that they need to turn within and ensure that they nurture themselves, right? Because again, Virgo is a sign of service. They're constantly looking outside of them to see, okay, what needs to be fixed? How can I help? But when that overwhelmment comes, right, you can kind of drift into that lower form of the Virgo energy and not be constructive. That means, let me turn within, let me nurture myself, let me heal myself. And then I can give service to the world. I can extend myself to the world again, as I'm here to do, right? Optimally.
What a difference a day made. 24 little hours brought the sun and the flowers where there used to be rain.
They say if you're on a plane and it's going down and you got your baby, you gotta give yourself the oxygen first. Now, it sounds absurd, just like serving oneself would sound absurd to a Virgo, right? But actually, you have to have a full tank. You can't help anyone without a full tank. Just like you can't help your child if you're giving them the oxygen first. In terms of planetary energies in the first house, anytime you have a planet there, it's incredibly powerful, because first house is the house of self. So any planets there, they will emanate strongly from you. People will feel them strongly from you. And Amanda has both Saturn and Jupiter in her first house. Now, I thought that this was hilarious, because what I recall is that she listened to herself and she said, I sound like a cop.
I'm just so deliberate when I speak. I'm so deliberate and I'm so unwavering. And I can see why folks would hear that and hear a sternness in it, like a rigidity in it that feels like someone being scolded. So like, I talk like a cop, but I also talk like a teacher that wants you to learn. You know, like I talk like a parent, but then I also talk like a coach that really cares about you winning the game.
Saturn rules police, it rules authority, it rules mastery in its highest form. Its lowest form, Obviously, nobody likes being talked to by a cop, right? And Jupiter is a very visionary planet. It rules expansion, vision. It actually also rules like preachers, things like that. So you can really feel those two energies. Anytime Jupiter has a conjunction with another planet, because the energies are so expansive, you might even feel that Saturn even more because of the fact that Jupiter is right there, right? Those energies are mixing together. An energetic that's moving together because they're on top of each other. They work as one. Now, circling back, and just wait for it because we have a special guest coming that you won't want to miss. Circling back in terms of likability, of course, the planet that I really wanted to check out in her chart is Venus. Venus rules relating, likability, love, all those kind of Venusian things. So, wanted to see what condition that her Venus was in. And lo and behold, if you look right here, you will see that Venus is conjunct her North Node. Any planet that's conjunct to the North Node, you're definitely on some type of journey to learning about that planet. Again, talk about living the chart in action. She most certainly is on a learning journey. The North Node represents our evolutionary path, okay? So Amanda is surely on the path to learning about love, relating to others. And don't forget, Venus also rules creativity, which clearly she's got down. To delve further into this topic, we're going to see what planetary energies, turn our channels on our AstroPop TV, see what planetary energies we should be tuning into. All right, I see some Neptune there, got some Mars, Pluto. Oh, hey, Jupiter. Oh, Sam, is that you?
Yeah, and I am
Yay!
honored to be here.
Now, for those who are unfamiliar with Sam Reynolds, I'll give you some tidbits about him. He is a brilliant astrologer, a master of the craft, with over 25 years of rigorous study under his belt. From medieval astrology to the Moors, Sam has all bases covered with his impressive in-depth study and his astrological prowess. Sam serves on several boards, is a mentor to many, and is also a champion of diversity in the field, heading Norwalk's Diversity Scholarship Committee. Now, one of my favorite things about Sam is he has so much knowledge, but he is so accessible and so practical, and I can't tell you how many times his sessions have been on point for me, succinct, and effective. AKA Sam is the man, okay?
Thank you.
Now, the story of Sam's journey to the road of astrology is very scorpionic, like his sun sign, if I might add. To quote Sam, "I once hated astrology more than any other occult." Now, Sam was initially a non-believer and a skeptic, right? I mean, you truly transform from a skeptic into a master. How very Phoenix rising from the ashes. I love it. Now, remind us, the story is you had a girlfriend that pretty much got you a reading and it blew you away, right?
It was a Gemini crush.
Oh, a crush. Okay.
Not even a girlfriend. It was a crush who said, because I'm born between Scorpio and Sagittarius, the putative cusp. And she, I said, if it's between the arachnid and the centaur, I was like, clearly I'm a centaur. And she's like, I think you're the bug. And I'm like, nah. So I had an opportunity to meet an astrologer. And so I was like, well, now this is my chance to shut that Gemini up. And and he told me that I was the bug, the scorpion. So that's the story. And he told me some particular things that went beyond guesswork that prompted me to try to understand how he did it, because I thought it was a trick. True Scorpio form, I was like, this can't be real. How did he do it?
Was it a challenging time for you, or why? What was it that made her like tell you to go like check out an appointment?
Well, she didn't.
Or was it
she didn't tell me to do anything. I mean, I actually met this astrologer because I was looking for a book on magic, and this is before Amazon. So I called around the city, in Philadelphia. I called around the city to see if anyone had this book, and only this brother, it was a brother, in North Philly had this book. It was Kofi's bookstore on Broad Street, but I'm trying to think.
Shout out to Philly.
Yeah, to Philly. So I went there to pick up the book, and then he started talking to me about astrology, and I was like, whatever. But at first, but then the light bulb went on, and I was like, oh, this could be a chance to shut up the Gemini.
Challenge. Talk about evolution. Like you went from one side to the other, but the fact that you went so deep into study, which I feel like is so scorpionic, just, like, let me see, like, what's going on, what's wrong, what's right. And that you embraced it too. I think that that's really powerful. A lot of people will get attached to just being right. And you're actually attached to truth, which I think is
That's true.
incredible. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
if I, for your viewers, listeners, what I might say is that you're focusing in on the Scorpion, and that's definitely true. But I think I've come to see it's more my Jupiter and Virgo in play. I'm a Pisces rising, and Jupiter is opposite directly to it. And Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces, and for me, the sole ruler of it. And I still consider myself more of an in-house skeptic, meaning not that I'm trying to disprove astrology. I believe it has a lot of value and a lot of power. But I think astrologers kind of sometimes stretch things or claim things, that I don't think is within their realm to claim per se, or that they didn't claim. So, for instance, with the recent assassination attempt, there's some astrologers, who with the Mars Uranus conjunction, who were saying, like, I told you. And I would look at their timelines. I'm like, you didn't say that publicly. What you said is that there could be some violence and other things. I mean, that's not really that hard in the 21st century.
Right.
So let's keep it 100. I mean,
yeah,
it's not like you said, I think the president's in trouble. There were some astrologers who did say that to give them credit, but many kind of try to stretch things more
riding
than
that wave.
Yeah, riding the wave.
Well, as someone who also has a Jupiter in Virgo, I think I really appreciate that approach because I think it gives more credibility to just the form itself. You know what I mean? When you're not
Absolutely.
trying to stretch things, when you're accurate about things. So I love that about you. One of many things.
Oh, thank you, Camilla.
Yes. Okay. So, Sam, one of our MOs here at AstroPop is I not only look at celebrity charts for entertainment purposes, but we also very much seek to foster understanding about ourselves and others. And I think that enables us to lend grace to ourselves and others, just understanding our dynamic, unique journeys that we are all here to embark upon. We're all here for very specific journeys. We're all very layered.
Wonderful.
So today I wanted to dive in specifically to the nodes. Earlier, I examined a chart with a north node that has a tight conjunction to Venus, to the natal Venus. And I wanted to discuss just natal Venus on the north node as you see it in terms of a journey to perhaps likability, lovability.
Where's the Venus?
So the Venus is in the 11th house.
And what sign?
It's in Leo.
Okay, go on.
Conjunct north node in Leo. For our viewers, anytime you have a north node, you know that the south node is the opposite. So the opposite sign of Leo is Aquarius. So you know automatically, okay, that's the south node. So I wanted to start with some key words, a summation of kind of defining the particular planet Venus and the nodes. Like for me, I always kind of refer to North Node as the North Star, with the sign reflecting the energetic direction that we're headed to or learning about in this lifetime, if you will, or this iteration. And the South Node is sort of like the energetic that we came in with, the things we already have down. For instance, if you're on a journey to becoming ambidextrous and you're right-handed, the North Node might be like your left hand and you're learning to write with that hand. How would you define the nodes?
Was I using that metaphor when you were with me?
Was that your metaphor too?
Yeah, that's the analogy
I
do.
Yeah, yes.
That's funny. So
yeah, that is funny.
I would say, because I didn't think I was using that. So it's kind of like that we just hooked in and came to that.
Not surprised.
But yeah, right? So I'll say a couple things. First, I'll talk about Venus. Venus is where we have, I call her celestial oxytocin, where we have the sense of connection and attraction, bonding, the experience of bonding, where we have the experience of enjoyment and pleasure,
Mm.
leisure.
Mm-hmm.
So she
Relating? Do you
relating.
consider it?
Well, yeah, that's all those things. Magnetic. So when I say celestial oxytocin, it's all dimensions of relating. What
Mm-hmm.
we like, right? In
Yeah.
terms of what you like, what kind of ice cream you like, all those kinds of things that pull you toward what has magnetism for you.
Mm.
And
Gotcha.
so, being in the sign of the sun, she's going to be, or they are going to be filtered through those likes through where that moon lands. I mean, that sun lands up.
Mm-hmm.
Also, in terms of like what, depending on what kind of house system you use, where Leo registers, what you said, the 11th house. So it depends where the
Mm-hmm.
sun is.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of being more tied to things that we could say social conscience, because that's how I define the 11th house.
Mm.
Social conscience, more
Mm-hmm.
not just consciousness but conscience, where you want to
Mm-hmm.
kind of be supportive of whatever kind of society that you want to see more in the world, or sense of
Mm.
society, which includes friends, the traditional marker and keyword that's associated with it. But it also could be the sense of colleagues, or also the people that you meet from your worldly encounters from the 10th
Mm.
house. So
Ah.
Venus.
Sun in the 10th, by the way.
Oh, the sun is in the 10th. So
Mm-hmm.
with the sun and Venus and the North Node there, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a person, because I think that the North Node, going with our the analogy that we have, the North Node would be reflective of our intentionality, or where we want to direct our attention. Sort of like you
Mm-hmm.
said, like if your less dominant hand is your left hand, you want to give more attention and intention to working with it to keep it strong or to strengthen it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we could say
Mm-hmm.
your south node is what is unintentional, what might be unconscious, and what kind of harks us back to the sense of the past. So that's
Mm.
like your dominant hand, where most of us don't remember
Mm-hmm.
how we got our dominant hands. Like, I don't know if someone asked me, like, well, when did you become right-handed? How did you know? I don't know, right? I
Right.
don't remember. So the
Right.
south node is there, and I think there's also become this kind of dialogue in astrology where we look at the north node as good and the south node as bad, but just like the hands, you need both of them, and both of them work a certain way. So with the north node being in the same sign, and I don't give orbs to the nodes by sign,
Oh,
meaning
okay.
that the north node affects everything that's in that sign. Even if the sun is 20 something degrees away, it's
Mm-hmm.
still affecting that sun, and it's still affecting that Venus. But Venus is, like you said, conjoined to the north node.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a person who is kind of conditioned to like the shine, um,
Mm.
the sense of the shine that comes through work that has a social
Mm-hmm.
conscience, some
Mm-hmm.
way in which they want to affect others,
Mm-hmm.
collaborate and work with others.
Mm-hmm.
But true to form, because we're talking about the north and south node along an axis, meaning that there's
Mm-hmm.
an opposition, as you pointed out. The south node means that this is a person who wants to support more the idea of the team, more the idea with others, kind of collaborate. So sometimes what can happen in that dialogue, and it is a dialogue of character, because I do think of the nodes as defining character that we do,
Mm-hmm.
or character building traits that we do with others, in
Mm-hmm.
a cohort of sorts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the south node may compel this person to kind of be in their own creative sauce, because it's in the fifth house by opposition, in
Mm-hmm.
their own creative sauce, wanting to kind of at the same time break molds, because it's in the sign of Aquarius, kind of going
Okay.
off the path. People,
Yes.
I do look at Saturn as the ruler of Aquarius,
Mm-hmm.
and people are confused by this, but one way I could put this is, if Saturn ruling Capricorn is evolution, then Saturn ruling Aquarius is mutation. So we have
Mm.
the aspect of dealing with mutation or change related to the South Node in Aquarius. So this is a person who is kind of wanting to do their own thing, but at the same time, with Venus being up there may be a struggle where they want to be likable, you know,
Right.
and
Right.
they want to also impact others and receive some measure of adoration. That can be a challenge because on some level they are, seeking the shine, but the South Node says like, girl, you're getting too much shine,
Right.
or dude, whatever. You're getting too much
Right.
shine. You don't need that. That's not who we are. Retreat
Right.
back into the shadows,
Right.
and
Right.
that can be the dynamic. But the North Node is what we feel compelled to give more attention and intention to. And it
Right.
also is, tethered to two planets. So Venus
Right.
and the sun. So this is where they're going to feel drawn to. Now, if let's put it this way. Let's say this person was drawn initially in life to kind of being an agent or facilitating, working for others or with others. What would happen because of the power of that Venus and the power of the sun is that they might feel directed, pushed, however you want to define how it happens, to kind of step into the spotlight somehow. They go from being behind to being in front of the camera or
Right.
on stage.
Right.
And sometimes they can't help but get the attention. And a lot of people would focus and say they just want attention. And this is kind of the common thought about Leo, that, they're just attention seeking, blah, 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 whatever, pejorative you want to add there. And I'm biased. I have a moon in Leo. So, I'm going to own that. Right. But as someone who strives to be objective, as you were pointing out, I've come to realize it's not so much just at times just seeking the attention. It's having the attention drawn to you, or where you step into it, and that wasn't your intention.
Absolutely.
And the sun is angular, so it has a lot more prominence, right?
Exactly. In that 10th.
So it's, with Venus and then also the North Node, it's kind of like deflecting or looking at the sun. Now, even though Venus, and I'll explain this for your listeners and viewers, Venus can't see the sun. You're like, what do you mean it can't see the sun? Well, because it's in the neighboring sign. Right. And by virtue of that, what that means, it's kind of for those who drive, it's one of the reasons why, you just can't rely on your rear view mirror, because if you have a car that's pulled up right next to you, it's not going to be in your rear view mirror. And so when you go to make that turn, a right turn or a left turn, you're about to hit a car. Right. And so Venus can't see the sun. So it's kind of like it can't really perceive it. And that was the traditional view of astrology, was whether planets could see each other, because it comes from the Latin aspectus, which means to be able to view, aspect, perspective. All these different words relate to it. So Venus.
And Sam, what is that aspect, by the way? Is that a semi-sextile or?
It would be a semi-sextile, yes.
Okay, 30
and
degrees.
A sextile, right? A sextile is 60 degrees, and half of that would be 30. So it's also considered an inconjunct. An inconjunct is either when a planet is 150 degrees away from another planet, or 30 degrees, which means like it's close enough that you can't see it. It's right on you. It's like in a horror flick where the killer is right behind you. Girl, turn around, and you can't see it. Now, I'm not calling the sun a killer or anything like that, but I'm saying that that Venus, even though she is in his house in Leo, can't see it. And so Venus may act out with that North Node in ways that the sun will be like, girl, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing it like that? And can't give directions. And Venus is like, I'm just trying to do Leo things. And North Node is like, girl, yeah, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Intentionality toward, being in the spotlight, cultivating others. Leo is also about encouragement. A lot of things about the sun is the heart of our solar system, and Leo is ruled by the sun. So what that means is that Leo is dealing with that aspect of courage. So you can think back to your lessons from The Wizard of Oz and what the Cowardly Lion wanted, right? It's kind of the idea of finding courage, which also ties into the word encouragement. So, it's the way of helping to support others, bring the light to others, share that light with others. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
becomes the real arc for the North Node in Leo, along with that Venus, is learning how to use your light, not just to shine for oneself, but to help
Mm-hmm.
others shine.
Exactly. And I think too with Leo, creative expression is huge, a huge way of shining and bringing that light to others. I have a North Node in Leo,
Oh,
so I can understand this archetype, and I'm, as you can see, kind of leaning into that shining thing, and it's totally true. The toggle between the, oh my God, I don't want to be seen, and the, okay, this creative expression, it's got to happen,
and
you
yeah,
know.
and you're a perfect example of that because you've been both behind the camera, in front of the
Oh
camera as
yeah.
well. And
Yeah.
because for those who, if you go to my YouTube page and you just look up Unlock Astrology, Camilla actually edited my opening video.
Ah,
I don't know if you remembered that, but yeah, I'll
yeah,
never forget that.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. So
Absolutely.
I'm so grateful.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful. And I didn't even think of that, the behind the, wow. And that's so Aquarian. It's like, kind of in the crowd behind, kind of more aloof, and the Leo coming out to the forefront,
And it's a dynamic, right? The
Yes.
Aquarius is the person, in the audience, you know, either
In the
appreciating,
crowd.
yeah, either appreciating or being like, what are they doing? Look at that, right? And then Leo's on the stage, right? And kind of like, aha, blah, blah, blah. And so there's a dynamic because then, and one of my nicknames for Aquarius, and I get in trouble for this, I call Aquarius winter Virgos.
So true.
Because there is
It
a
is so
critical,
true.
because they're, as I mentioned, they're children of Saturn.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
so there's a critical side to it. So it's like the
Mm-hmm.
dialogue between the critic and the artist. Because a
Absolutely.
lot of artists always question the viability or suitability of a critic, and I don't really understand it. I'm like, well, both are necessary in terms of the advancement of the art. You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an exchange. And I forget, an astrologer said about Aquarians, I don't remember who, love humanity, hate humans.
yes,
About Aquarians. And I have a lot of them in my life, and clearly my South Node is in Aquarius, so I totally understand that.
wonderful.
The big question that I had in terms of Venus conjunct the North Node, and just any planetary conjunctions to the North Node, like, would you say one's origins are the antithesis or the absence of that? Like, is this someone who's coming in where love is awkward, or they're anti-love, or like anti-likable, and they're on a journey to basically Venusian kind of qualities? Is that, I mean, I know that's very black and white, and we do think of the nodes as more of an exchange, but what are your thoughts on that?
The North Node is a character builder.
Mm.
Um, where you are directed to find more strength. Where the other kind of way I put it is the dialogue or the diametrical opposition between preservation and restoration, which are not the same. So the South Node is a preserver, where you're seeking to preserve something that
Mm.
has kind of gone into some measure or could be at the danger of disrepair. You know,
Mm.
sort of like
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about grandmothers or grandparents. You know,
Mm-hmm.
my grandparents with their what do they call it? Uh, French Restoration, their French Restoration furniture. Everything was covered in plastic, which baffled me as a kid because I'm like, why you have this beautiful furniture covered in plastic, right?
Right.
And it is to preserve it, right? So your soggy
Mm.
butt doesn't really soil their nice seat. That's kind of how we might think about the South Node. Whereas the North Node, you're seeking to restore something that has gone into disrepair. Like you find an old
Mm.
chair and it's an antique chair and it's vintage and you
Mm-hmm.
kind of can do the work to kind of bring it up to snuff. So this is what's happening with the North Node, being in the same sign, co-present with Venus or conjoined to Venus, that
Mm-hmm.
this Venus is undergoing rehabilitation, a different level of
Mm.
understanding, to be more in touch with Venusian things through the filter of Leo, through the filter of the sun.
Mm.
So, you know, being drawn to the arts, you know, so for instance, if Mama was to say, speaking of the South Node, right, and more Saturn, like, girl,
Mm-hmm.
go into accounting or be like a lab technician, or why don't you be a
Mm-hmm.
scientist or something like
Mm.
that? And I don't know why Mama has to sound like this, but I'm just going to go with it for now, right?
I like it. I like
Right.
it.
But this is a person who may be drawn more toward the arts because they're following, like you said, the North Star, the idea of that Venus being cultivated and being
Mm.
restored.
Do you feel like this person may have trouble or be on a journey to like relating to people or,
Yes.
you know?
So,
Okay.
and not just relating, but a certain way of relating.
Mm.
Um, this may be a person who may have given too much attention to others, may have been too deferential. So this is a person who may need to learn. And of course, you can lean too much into this, but this is a person who may need to learn to lean into, you know, people coming to them. So let's talk about it
Mm.
as if they were heterosexual, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's, just to be honest, and this is for my queer friends, I speak about what I know. So I
Mm-hmm.
can't speak as much about that experience, but I don't want to feel like I'm maligning it or disregarding it. But
Love that.
in terms of, let's say, if she were heterosexual, then this would be a woman. If it's a woman, right? This would be a
Mm-hmm.
woman who needs to stop, you know, supplicating to men. Don't be a pick me. This
Mm.
is someone who's like, you're gonna choose me. I'm not gonna have to choose you.
Mm.
This is someone
I'm the prize.
who stands in her power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And recognizes that I'm a person of value, and I'm gonna act as a person
Mm.
of value, and you're gonna treat
Mm.
me as a person of value. And I
Mm.
think this becomes important. Not can you lean more or lean too much into it? Of course. But this is someone I might say, like, don't open doors for yourself when you're on a date.
Mm.
And you know, you may say, like, well, you're just old fashioned. Maybe. And I can admit that, but there's another thing at work here too, which I believe. I believe in making men work because men benefit
Absolutely.
from work,
That
right?
Mars energy.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
make him get out the car, open the door for you, let you into the car, and shut the door. And that's not just about, you know, like you being the prize. Now it would be too much then for her to be like, you know, if she just kind of said, like, you know, if the man asks her, well, like, well, what am I getting out of this? Well, me. And not realize, like, okay, it's also going to be like you being the sun and generating warmth, energy,
Mm-hmm.
helping to kind of beautify each other's lives, because it doesn't mean just about doing things for him, but, you know, each other's
Mm-hmm.
lives, but all these things that one can mutually enjoy.
Right. Kind of getting out of that Saturnian and going more into the warmth of the Leo.
Correct. You know, it's kind of
Right.
being warm, you know, and not just Saturnian. And Saturnian doesn't mean just cold. It can mean just
Right.
like, what am I getting? What can I get?
Mm.
What are you going to
Mm.
do? Or, you know, Saturn is also where we just talk about the levels of exchange,
Mm.
you know,
Got you.
rather
Yeah.
than,
Yeah.
you know, or kind of being too used to being an audience that you're not used to being a participant. Let me just sit back and
Mm.
watch.
Mm. That's so deep. Yeah, for this particular person, she has kind of garnered this whole, it was really a campaign of saying how unlikable she is, or why does she get on people's nerves, or this and this and that. So that's what really made me want to kind of dive into her chart. And like I said, the first thing I noticed was that Venus on the North Node, and it was very tight conjunction. I'm like, okay, this person is obviously, you know, on some type of journey. And I was super curious. And also for other people who may have Venus on their North Node, maybe what are some prescriptions? The example about the door, for instance, I think is a very good prescription. It's sort of like hold yourself in high regard, but also you don't have to fight for it. Just hold yourself in high regard. Like the Leo, be the magnet and have it be drawn to you.
And, you know, what's funny about this in terms of you having me on, and then just to kind of the testament to how mystical and the mystery of astrology that works beneath everything. I have a Venus conjoined to the South Node,
Wow.
so it's a different experience and a different imperative,
That's deep.
related to like talking about a person with a Venus in the North with the North Node.
Mm. What has been your experience? Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. I mean, Venus with the South Node, it's kind of, well, the South Node. One thing I haven't said, because I was talking about it being preserved. This is where also something is being surrendered to the past, or
Right.
surrendered to the world that we can't see.
Right.
And so I would define that as the experience of where one has to kind of surrender a certain emphasis on charm or Venusian things a certain way,
So
right?
you came in a lover boy, eh?
You said it, I didn't.
Lover boy.
So in that, somewhat true. It's funny
Mm.
that you hooked into that. Like I, started off with the things related to love at a very early age. Some of it not so good.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it, fairly good. Like my favorite movie. This is a funny aside. My favorite movie growing up, like from the age of 4, where my mom
Mm-hmm.
said like I was crying in front of it, was Love Story, featuring Ali
Oh.
McGraw. And
Oh my gosh. Love
so,
her.
and
Throwback.
what's funny
Mm-hmm.
is, so I fell in love with the Ali McGraw Aries archetype or image, and blah blah blah. Long story short, just maybe 3 months ago, she lives here in Santa Fe, and I met her.
No
She
way. Did
drove
you
up.
fan out?
Oh yeah, I did. I was an idiot. I was a complete idiot. Having lived in New York, you get conditions instilled against kind of like,
Yeah.
seeing
Ignore.
celebrities and just like, okay. But no, no, no. I let that, that 4-year-old boy came out like, oh, is that it? And she was driving up toward me. I recognized her immediately in her car, in her Subaru. And she's driving toward
Wow.
me. And it's like, I'm waving like an idiot. And she's like thinking like, maybe like, oh, there's someone is in distress.
Right.
And
Let me help him with a flat tire.
right. And I was like, hi, I had wanted to meet you my whole life. Okay. Right. And she was very friendly. And she's like, well, I said, my name is Sam. Well, no, she asked me, she said, what's your name? Sam. I said, Sam. And she said, my name is Ali. I'm like, I know who you are. I know who you are. And she's like, do you live in Santa Fe? And I was like, yeah. She's like, well, I'll see you around. Okay. And I shook her hand. I was like, okay. But I
That's
was
so
like,
cute.
yeah, I was like, oh, wow. So it's funny that you would say that. Now,
Mm.
what's interesting about that, for those who haven't seen the movie, and I won't go too deep into like my history with it, but so I have Venus conjoined the South Node in the 8th house.
Mm. What
So,
sign, Sam?
Libra. So
Okay.
Venus is in her dignity, in her domicile.
Mm-hmm.
Now, long story short, I'm about to give a spoiler, but I still would encourage you to watch the film.
Definitely.
Ali dies, right? And so it's kind of, and I think that's what I was moved by. Venus conjoined in the South Node, or like the sense of loss, in the 8th house,
In the 8th house. Yeah.
right?
Wow, that is so
And she's an
deep.
Aries, by the way, opposite to
Oh,
my,
wow.
it's conjoined to
Oh,
my North Node,
North Node.
but opposite to my South
Wow.
Node. So it's just
Oh, my
interesting to see how the
goodness.
dynamics might play out. You know,
Mm.
she may have had some potent encounters. She who I'm talking about, the person you're talking about now. She may have
Mm-hmm.
had some potent encounters with Aquarian folks, or maybe Leo folks along that axis, and playing out
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
dynamic as well.
The last thing that I kind of want to, not kind of, that I would like to dive into, one thing that popped into my mind as looking at her Venus and North Node at 1 and 2 degrees. Well, what's happening at the opposite of that? We got Pluto
Oh,
transiting that South Node in Aquarius. So I just wanted to kind of talk about, I guess, planetary transits to the South Node, in particular, Pluto to the South Node. I mean, that it sounds so extreme because, as you said, the South Node is about surrendering. Some people think it's about, loss. And then we have Pluto, which, if we can visit that archetype, is about what would you say, like power, intensity, you know, death, life, rebirth? How would you describe the planet Pluto? And then we can get into that transit to the South
I'm going to
Node.
go in a slightly different direction, but related to your question.
Yes.
I am not. I'm not hooked into a firm belief of something called higher octaves of planets, but there
Yes, I
is
do
this.
know this.
But there is this idea that for the traditional seven, the outer planets can function as outer or as higher octaves, as deeper, more engrossing manifestations of the quote unquote lower octave.
Correct.
What I'm not going to get too literal about that, but what I think is instructive is to think of Pluto as the higher octave of Venus, and let me explain.
Mm.
Pluto, well, Venus, we just talked about celestial oxytocin, how we have the idea of pleasure. But
Mm-hmm.
Pluto, I think, as where we have the deeper recesses of desire that we may not even want to own. What we kind of
Mm.
scuttle into the underworld or beyond us or not directly in us.
Okay.
What we might say belongs to others. I'm not power hungry. You're power hungry. You're greedy.
Mm. Mm.
And then,
It's like
next,
shadow projection.
yeah, it's where we may not acknowledge the deeper recesses of things within us.
Okay.
And what Pluto is doing as he conjoins toward a planet like the nodes, particularly let's say the South Node, an example you're giving, he's surfacing things that may have been denied, because remember the South Node is what already is kind of developed from our past,
Correct.
or what we might think we've surrendered, or what we're going beyond, what's overdeveloped, like our strong hand or whatever. And so
Mm-hmm.
Pluto is kind of bringing this up and like, is this yours? Did you lose this, right? And so
Mm.
he's surfacing these things that probably in her psyche and perhaps even in her life that she has to wrestle with, which is the question of likability. So it's the opposition. So
Mm.
she's actually doing a fantastic thing
Mm.
in kind of excavating, because that's one of the words I also use with Pluto,
Absolutely.
excavating this
Mm-hmm.
this question of likability and unlikability. And I think it's
Mm.
important for women to do that. You're like, well, why women?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so much emphasis and pressure put on women specifically to deal
Being
with being
liked.
likable.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, this is something that we saw even in 2016 with Hillary, um,
Mm-hmm.
and the question of being likable. And if Kamala
Mm-hmm.
ends up being the candidate, the nominee,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be something that's also going to be a pressure on her.
Absolutely.
Um, it's just something that goes on with women, and I think it's an important thing to excavate and explore, because of like some of the things that are put on women to be likable aren't things
Mm-hmm.
that are put on for men.
Absolutely
A
not.
man can be in some situations uncivil and like, oh, he's just not taking any shit. But if a woman does it, oh, you're a bitch.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely double standard.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that is a great point about the excavation and her like really diving deep into what is this likability thing. One of the things I remember that you did for me in my reading, you told me that when you had a Saturn transit, you would pick up a kettlebell every day. And essentially, you were talking about how to integrate the energies of the planet. Jessica Lanyadoo on one of her podcasts said every challenging transit is a blessing. What would you say in terms of Pluto? Like you told me for Saturn, pick up that kettlebell, give yourself that weight, commit to something every single day. That's what Saturn wants. So what would you say maybe to someone perhaps who is undergoing this kind of a Pluto transit and Pluto on the South Node? What energetic do you think that someone could incorporate
I think it would
to
be
really
important to be in a therapeutic process, whether it's with a group,
mm, mm,
right? Because Aquarius, but
mm-hmm,
or that one does on one's own, or that you see a
mm-hmm.
therapist, because you want to kind of go deep. And
Yeah.
a process, or even if we're talking about something like the artist's way,
Mm-hmm.
that can become a guy, because even when we think that we're being deep, we often may need somebody, again, that dialogue between Venus and Pluto, who pushes us to go deeper. You know, it's like why there's a benefit to having a trainer at some point, because you know, you're most of us either will have the impetus toward just doing enough, you know, to kind of say we did something, because the ego or the sense of self wants to protect that self, whereas
Right.
another person may be like, I think you can do more or you can go beyond. And so being participating in a process with others may be one way, but I think she may have found it, you know, kind of being on a tour to kind of probe likability. You know,
I
again,
love that
another,
probe.
yeah,
Yeah,
another
probe
Pluto
is so
word,
Plutonian.
right? Another Pluto word. I mean, I think that is a way to do it. Some people find the remediation for a transit naturally, and some people don't. And you know, the cool thing, the astrologer's job is to kind of suggest remedial tasks that the person can accomplish, that they can choose, that may suit them better to help them during this difficult time that they must go through. It is a mandate. You're going to go through it.
Right,
It's just a
right,
matter of how you're going to go through it.
right. It's kind of like they say, work the transit or the
Transit's
transit
going
will
to work
work
you.
you. Yeah, so true. So for our viewers, like Sam said, if perhaps you are undergoing a Pluto to the South node, or I would say like any kind of Plutonian transit, therapy is a great prescription, probing, going deep. Anything else, Sam, that you would suggest? Because Pluto is a pretty powerful.
Well, I think it's important to listen to oneself.
Mm,
There's a range of things.
mm-hmm,
Um, you know, it could be that you feel a need to kind of put yourself at a different level of risk, you know, as you're undergoing Pluto. And,
mm-hmm.
you know, obviously I hope I'm not encouraging anyone to take like some foul risk, like, oh yeah, well, let's jump off a building and see if you can bounce off of a, you know, some kind of like, you know, umbrella or something like that. but
Right.
but more so where you might endeavor to do something to dig in with some measure of grit that you didn't know you had.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it could be, you know, it's a test of your marrow when Pluto comes in, you know.
Right. Right.
um what are you made of, and
Mm.
how do you feel this taps into your ability to survive. um
Survive. Another Pluto keyword.
Another, yeah, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that becomes, you know, how you might find it. So that requires listening to oneself, and I always think that's true with any transit, where you leave
Mm-hmm.
space, you know, either, you know, I'm a big advocate for either in the middle of the night or as you're going to sleep or as you're waking up, to listen to yourself, because that's when your mind is less on the you know, defensive, and can just be open,
Right. Right.
and you can ask
Right.
yourself, you know, sometimes the hard questions. You know,
Mm.
what do I need now? Do I really love Bob? Right?
Right.
You know, whoever Bob is for you in your life or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, like, why don't I like my job? And you might be
Right.
surprised by the answer.
Right. Because Pluto, does it have to do with the unconscious?
Yeah,
Like,
the deeper
yeah, so
recesses of
I
the
love
mind.
that.
Hmm.
Right. I love what you say about the sleep level, because it's sort of that in between state, almost like going like through hypnotherapy or something, to where your defenses are down and the unconscious is obviously the unknown.
Hmm.
So you're really, providing the space to allow those things to rise. Literally the whole excavation, the going deep with Pluto, and being fearless to witness what those answers are, to face that truth.
That's
Like,
correct.
Pluto is about truth, no matter how ugly it gets.
I think all the other planets are truth. I think they just
Mm.
resonate at different levels of understanding truth. So
Mm-hmm.
Pluto,
And different levels of intensity, because
yeah.
Pluto, ooh.
Well, I think they're all intense in different
Well,
ways.
different kind, yeah,
Yeah.
actually, because Neptune, believe it or not, I think was harder for me than my Pluto. Well, I had them
Oh,
kind of on top of each other. I was so disoriented.
spot on. I mean, I tell people, like,
Whew.
if I had to be fearful, I think I even
Yeah.
said it on Twitter. I'm like, I'm more fearful of Neptune than I am of Pluto.
Absolutely.
Neptune isn't kind of like how as benign as people make her sound.
Woo!
But
She's dissolving
yeah, so
and
it's like
disorienting at times.
and also to kind of pierce through illusions, and then Pluto's like, you see that? Are you going to own it now? And Uranus kind of shatters the illusion, right? It's the
Right.
breaker,
Right.
and
Right.
or breaker what you thought the ordinary realm, and then you're looking at it like, oh, I'm lost, I'm disoriented, all those things you experience, and then Pluto is kind of like, redirecting you back toward your north star, so to speak, through
Yeah.
through truth, through
Absolutely.
facing it, Shaka
Which I
Khan.
think feels more empowering and grounding. And to your point, as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, it's a little different, whereas Neptune, like, I would love to discuss, they always talk about, like, with Neptune transits, once it's over and that wool or rug comes from under you, you feel like a naked baby. Like, it's just like, damn, you got shaken out of a dream.
That's true.
Whereas Pluto, after a Pluto transit, while it might have been hard, I feel like you're never the same in a way that's more empowering and fearless.
Right.
Yeah. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say it's kind of like when you finish like a tough course, or you go through like your freshman year. You're like, oh wait, I'm grown. I mean, your college freshman year, not your high school freshman year, but like, wait, I'm a little grown. I mean, I was able to handle it. I didn't flunk out of college, right?
Right. I didn't die.
I didn't die.
Yeah.
And no one killed me. That's the other thing, I thought about with college. Yeah, I think of Shaka Khan's Through the Fire with Pluto. Through the fire.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like that whole kind of like, you kind of come out burnished, but not burnt.
I love that song as, oh my God, that's perfect, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
That is so perfect. And we love Shaka. So
we do.
Yes.
A good Aries.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh yeah. She a badass.
See, I got a thing for Aries influenced people. That's
That's your North Star, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it is. I got to work on that, but yeah, Aries something else for me. Anyway,
me too. Well, I have a Venus in Aries, so
there you go.
I'm with you there. I'm like, give me the badass. Let's go.
Right.
Let's go.
Go for the badass.
Well, Sam, I want to thank you so much for stepping into our AstroPop lens and blessing us with all of your wisdom, your energy, your Leo entertainment, and just that knowledge. So grateful for you. And for our viewers, I have Sam's Unlock Astrology link in my comment section. If you want to book a reading, if you want to look at his classes, mentorship, he's got a ton of stuff. But Sam, do you have any last words for the show, or anything you want to promote? Or
well, a couple of things. I am look for on my Instagram, which is SF Reynolds, F as in Fred. On my Instagram, I'm going to be promoting a resort experience that I'm participating in Utah, where I'm going to be talking about predictive astrology. But there are also other astrologers who are going to be there, doing like 3-day long workshops to kind of deep dives into different aspects of astrology. So that's in October. But I am going to start up with my classes in September. So I'm going to start off with a beginner's class, and then there's more of an advanced class, nitty-gritty 3. So I'm going to be busy in the fall, inshallah.
Always. Sam is busy. And I actually took one of Sam's nitty-gritty classes. It's one of my first in-depth classes, and it's excellent.
Thank you.
Like I said, Sam knows a lot, but his presentation is very accessible.
Thank you.
And as someone with a bunch of planets in Virgos and a Pisces Mercury, I learned from him.
Well, it's my favorite Mercury, actually. I know you
is
guys
it?
You guys
we get a bad rap.
Yeah, you get a bum rap, but I think it's...
And why do we get a bum rap? So that our viewers know, in terms of like...
So, because it's in Pisces, people just think that you're ditzy and lost, or, slow to get to grasp things. But,
and also, is it considered in fall, or is it...
It's in fall. It's in fall, because Mercury is exalted in Virgo and also rules Virgo, but it's considered in fall. But One of the reasons why I
Mm-hmm.
love the Mercury in Pisces is that for two reasons. One is statistical, based on the research of a particular astrologer, and one is just more metaphorical. So I
Mm-hmm.
always say that Mercury in Pisces, they're like the kid who knows the answer but can't show their work in the math class. So they don't know how they
Absolutely.
came to it because it's in the
Absolutely.
sign of Jupiter and the watery sign of it. So it's kind of like I absorb something, but I don't know
Yes.
how I came to the conclusion. And then statistically, an astrologer named Frank Piotrowski, he actually discovered through looking at stats that many of the people who had Mercury and Pisces often had high IQs, and even were in
Wow.
Mensa. And so there's a creative dimension of it where you have to think out of the box by virtue of the
Yes.
Mercury and Pisces, rather than just being
Yes.
conventional. So
Oh.
I think it's a good placement, but like I said, it catches a lot of flack. And that's just because people just look at essential dignities, which is what we're talking about, on a very
Mm-hmm.
superficial level.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I thank you for that. And it's so funny that you said that, because I always say I learned through osmosis. Like I definitely don't learn in a traditional way. And like you said, I can't explain how it gets in there, but it gets in. Or like through pictures. I'm very
Yep.
picture oriented. I always thought that everyone saw, like, had flashes of things, especially when I see music, when I hear music, I see it. So it's fun. It's fun to have, and it's awesome to hear you talk about just speak about it in a different way, because on this show I think it's very important um to embrace all of our placements.
I agree.
uh yeah, absolutely. And just because something is in the fall, it's no, you're supposed to have that placement for
Right.
a
I
reason.
mean, when we talk about planets in fall or in detriment, that means that the planet is called to do things that go against the grain, which
Mm.
when astrology was in its development, we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
societies that had to privilege conventionality, that had to privilege consensus. Because if you went
Exactly.
against the normative, it could threaten the collective.
Mm.
It could threaten the village. You
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
deciding that you're going to do something creative in a
Mm-hmm.
certain way could be dangerous. It's like, well, what
Mm.
if we cook the meat this way? What if we all died
Mm-hmm.
from the way you cooked the meat or didn't cook the meat?
Right, right. And I
Right?
think that that's so important to keep in mind, because this is the mindset of why it's being developed. It's not just about the reality of things, it's also about keeping society in a certain condition,
Right.
essentially.
Which
Or
is not,
having
yeah,
you know,
which is not our modern society in the same way. I mean, there's some dimensions of that, of course, but
right, right. But
we
less ulterior motive.
right, yeah. There's more now where we can, especially in America, we can privilege innovation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas
Love that.
innovation, even and did no, you didn't grow up with Islamic culture, but um,
I did.
oh, you did.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I did, yeah.
all right, I confused you. Sorry. So, confused with someone else. So, even still in Muslim culture, we say bidah, right? In terms
Mm-hmm.
of as a bad thing, like no innovation. It's kind of maintaining the sunnah just
Mm-hmm.
as it is. Like the law and the example of the prophet, and that
Mm-hmm.
was much of the traditional mindset. So, a planet in
Mm-hmm.
fall and detriment is kind of
Mm-hmm.
bidah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, what a great example. Wonderful example, Sam. Well, I want to thank you again for joining us on AstroPop, for being my first guest. Like I had such a wonderful time exchanging with you, and I hope that you come back
Yeah, happy
to
back.
visit us.
Thank you.
Hello, my celestial sweethearts. Thank you so very much for joining me for my premiere episode, the launch episode, the very first episode of AstroPop TV. Oh my God, finally popped out my creative baby. And as you might notice, this was recorded a little bit ago. It was recorded actually last year, as my, natal Mars and Virgo would have it. I really wanted to perfect it and get it into a place that reflected, my vision for Astropop. But just wanted to thank you guys for your support. Please like, share, subscribe. And if you want more Astro tidbits, because, can't say everything in the public. Something's got to be behind the scenes, 12th house, you know what I mean? Consider joining my Patreon, which I'll be launching in May. You know, AstroPop is a one-woman band, and I really appreciate your support, because your support helps me move forward to continue to make these types of videos and this type of content about the thing that we love the most, astrology and pop culture. Okay. So, again, thank you so much. Love you so much, and stay tuned.